Hey, Shadow Stalkers. As the days grow shorter and shadows stretch longer, we've got a special treat for you. Our friend Neon Static has conjured up a chilling tale to mark the creeping approach of autumn. Dim the lights, settle in, and let the unsettling begin.
Well, hello, strangers. Don't touch that dial. You've tuned in to the Darkness Diaries, who's recently celebrated 1,000 listeners, one of them being me. So here's my little congratulations gift to you. It's story 42, and here's what happened. In uni, I chose to major in accounting and minor in a foreign language. I wanted to stand out from a sea of MBAs, so I chose the two fields that would be of benefit in an international firm. My reasoning was simple. What company have you heard of that doesn't have taxes or overseas concerns in which both financial and language translation skills would be clutch? Thankfully, my school had an entire department of language, from Asian to Slavic. I chose Chinese Mandarin. True, the tonal fluctuations can be hard to get a handle on. There's a lot of unlearning of how American English uses tonal inflection, and a lot of context clues to help you figure out what's being said. For those who don't know what I mean, and for anyone reading this, let me explain. When you ask a question in American English, how do you use your voice to signal a question? There, right there, you add a rising tone. Like, have you read the paper today? Your voice rises on today to show whoever you're talking to, hey, I'm asking you a question. Well, in Mandarin, you add a ma to the end of the sentence as a verbal question mark. You do so because tones take a word and change its whole meaning. As for measure words, well, even a native speaker sometimes stutters or blends words together when they're speaking casually or fast, or are distracted, just like an English speaker. The tones can get very subtle, and when you're dealing with words that sound very similar, you need context clues to know which meaning is being said. Stay with me. This is relevant. Measure words are clues for types of nouns. Like if you said 9 sweaters, the Mandarin equivalent is something like 9 articles of clothing, sweaters. The articles of clothing measure word, jian, helps you identify they're talking about clothes. Once you hear that, you're sort of prepared for the next word in the sentence to be clothes, and understand they mean sweaters and not Maui commercial trade. I know that's a lot, and you came here to read spooky stories, but trust me, it's context you need to understand. Well, I can't even say I understand what happened, only that to this day, it fills me with a sense of dread. In the second year of my studies, we ended up working on real-life examples. Great deal for businesses and schools to get a little free translation, and great practice for us. I got a summer internship at one of the places our teaching staff set us up with. My work was transcription at a place that did imports and exports of raw commodities from one spot, and sales of finished products at eyebrow-raising markups to another. I'd come in, say hello to the other folks in the office, and then sit down at my desk and start reviewing files for cuts of audio. Each file had at least 2 cuts, the initial purchase of raw goods and the ultimate selling of finished product. On this particular day, I'd gotten to work, opened a folder, and it only contained 1 audio clip. Sometimes this happened when the finished product wasn't completed or sold yet, hence no audio. But here's what's weird. It was the raw materials audio that was missing. How could we record a sale when we didn't have anything to sell? I looked through the rest of the file, hoping to find out which boss was attached to the file to follow up. Weirdness number 2. It wasn't a boss's name I had seen once that whole summer. I half knew the surname, Huang, because that's a common surname. In fact, it was shared by the CEO, CFO, and quite a few others in this company. For ease of storytelling in English, Huang is a word that translates to yellow. So it's like the CEO is David Yellow, the CFO is Paul Yellow, and so on. But this audio cut was spoken by an Andy Yellow. Despite going through 12 to 15 folders a day for the last 2 months, I'd never seen that name. Well, maybe someone was doing a little good old-fashioned nepotism. After all, only top execs made deals like in these folders. Whoever Andy Yellow was, he was high up, but maybe also knew enough to not know that both raw materials and finished goods were expected to be documented. I made a note to be on the lookout for the missing raw materials file and kept going. I had a job to get done and at least one cut of audio to listen to, transcribe, and interpret into English. Nothing weird here, just a misplaced file. But then the audio cut itself was also odd. Most of the executives had a level, almost bored sound to them. They'd just dryly explain, "We bought lumber from here to make cabinet doors there." Andy Yellow sounded keyed up. In any language, it was unmistakably animated, fidgety even. It also sounded like he'd recorded in a car with the engine on. The ambient engine sounds made it really hard to concentrate. The transcript I came up with was, in summary, 55 pens delivered to a business. Okay, wait a minute. So this was a person high up enough in the corporate food chain to warrant someone else transcribing their dictation, recording a sale of 55 pens. Did he mean boxes of pens? No. Remember those measure words? The measure for box in the word itself, huzza, was clearly not in the recording. It was just number, measure word for pen, and pen. Unless, maybe I'd mistaken the measure word. Maybe I missed the generic measure word of g, and the word I thought was pen was something else. I clicked back through the folder and saw a few scanned documents in folders of their own. These were normally paper receipts and notes that the execs wanted in the folder, but weren't part of what we interns were to process. I assumed it was receipts, maybe for lunch or hotels used during the business trip. And since the onboarding lady had told us to ignore it, and because to this day I am awful at reading Chinese handwriting, I'd never opened them. But without raw material to guess from, and without anything else in the recording to help me figure out what to write up on the transcript, well, I clicked open the PDFs and was met with a number of scans. 2 had names. The others just had the random alphanumeric name that scanners assign to documents. I clicked the first file and found a restaurant bill for an eye-popping amount, near $4,000. Well, Mr. Andy Yellow may have been new to the firm, but he sure seemed to know his way around the corporate gold card. I closed it and clicked open the second scan. Jackpot. The characters for 55 jumped out at me. But again, there were just 2 characters after it, presumably a measure word and a single character word. The jur I translated as the measure word for long things, and as pens, was incorrect. It was jur, the measure word for animals. Animals? Well, that made no sense. The firm sold office supplies like monitors and basic industry staples like, well, staples. They didn't trade in livestock. I was so focused on getting this translation that I just kept focusing on the scan, trying to parse out the measure word and what it was. I didn't know the measure word. It had 2 parts to it. One that loosely translated meant corpse, and another that meant cave or hole. Corpse hole. Like a grave? What? What even was this? I backed out of that file and chose one of the random alphanumerically named files. When it opened, I found myself staring at a picture of a young woman. This made even less sense. There were handwritten characters off to the side of the picture, but the picture itself stole all of my attention. The woman was smiling, but the grainy quality looked like an official government photo. From a driver's license, maybe. Or maybe some picture-based badging system in a different facility. Why was this in here? I worked in raw materials and finished product delivery, not recruitment or onboarding. I tried another random file and was met with another random woman staring back at me. She seemed younger than the first, and her smile tense. Again, I thought of driver's license photos. I tried to parse the handwriting on the side, but it was an indecipherable mess to someone who still had trouble recognizing typed characters. Frustrated, I just closed them both and decided to ask one of my fellow interns at lunch. Of them, Grace was the obvious choice. She was a native speaker who trounced my piddly 15 or so transcriptions a day. So I did. But I only got as far as asking if she'd ever transcribed for an Andy Yellow. Her eyes got very wide. She said, "Oh, sorry, no. That's a mistake. Huang and Dee's folders go to a different branch." She was normally so matter-of-fact, almost brusque. Her tone, halting speech, and general nervousness told me not to continue with the strange order he'd fulfilled. She left the lunchroom early. I presume it was to tell a supervisor about the mistake. For when I'd returned to my desk, the computer had been restarted. When I clicked back through my assignments, the Andy Yellow folder was gone. I thought, well, mistake rectified. On to the next. I worked mechanically through the rest of my folder quota. Just before 6 p.m., when I'd normally clock out, one of the floor supervisors stopped by my desk, wanting to check in with me. He was perfectly friendly. He just wanted to know how I was getting on. Wanting to make a good impression for both me and my school, I told him I liked the work and felt it was very beneficial to work with a firm and see how a successful business did things. He seemed pleased, maybe even relieved by my answers. He told me I was doing great work and bade me good night. I left soon after. But like finding a popcorn kernel stuck in your molars, my brain just kept returning to that strange character. Corpse, whole. Proficiency with business terms was a priority for me, given my career path, and I thought it best to jot the word down to figure it out later, before I could get caught flat-footed in a meeting. So I did. I wrote down the character with corpse and whole. And then, promptly, I forgot about it. I blame the rum drinks my roommate had waiting for me that night. It didn't help that I wrote the character down in a nearly full notebook. Thus, I never thought to carry it to any class where I'd be reminded. Like I said, I blame the rum. I worked this job for the rest of the semester. I got my credit, and I moved on with my other classes. I never found another one of those weird Andy Yellow folders, nor did I find scanned pictures of women again. At the end of my 4th year, post-graduation, I got about the bittersweet business of packing up my half of the dorm room. My roommate and I had a few friends over, a few, way fewer shots, and we're really not doing it efficiently. Lots of, "Look what I found," and, "Ha, your eyes look so drunk in this picture," jaunts down memory lane. One of my fellow language majors, Jen, had studied Korean. She was flipping through my old notebooks, pointing out words and phrases that the two languages had in common. Then she got to the end, saw something that made her sputter in laughter. "Looks like someone was learning swears. Naughty. $10 in the swear jar for you." I looked at what she was pointing at. What else? That long-forgotten mystery character. Corpse, whole. The second my eyes fell on that, I remembered the weird business, the Andy Yellow folders, the pictures of women. Something uneasy began to settle in me. I asked her, "What? It's a curse word. It's a word I saw at work." My confusion made her giggle. "Did you work at a truck stop?" We all laughed a bit, me a bit bewilderedly, and she continued, "If you saw this at work, I'd be taking it to HR. It's," and here she struggled in how to say it nicely, Well, it's the C word. I paused, feeling my brain click like a loaded gun being cocked. The C word, slang for women. The measure word, for animals. That weird number, 55, too low for a sale worthy of recording along with the million-unit sales I'd seen. The mysterious Andy Yellow and his $4,000 dinner. Grace's immediate reaction that I was looking at something I shouldn't be, that none of us should be looking at. The disappearance of the folder that started the whole thing. And of course, two faces. Two plain, tensely smiling faces. I laughed, more out of shock than humor. I didn't know what else to do. I let my friends think that I'd just been transcribing someone's curses within a heated business meeting or something. They went home about an hour ago, but I've just been sitting here since, wondering what to do. Part of me wants to just chalk it up to a misunderstanding, maybe an immature joke by a black sheep nephew. But the other part keeps going back to the contents of that folder. The photos. 2 scans I'd opened, dozens more I hadn't. Had there been 55 of them? The 2s whose faces silently watched me, the others buried under a thin layer of file-named dirt. I know what this looks like, and worse, I feel what this is. But what can I even do? Is this even enough to tell someone? My brain can't help but wonder, what if? What if, in a beige office building, some college girl glanced upon the faces of women sold and did nothing about it? And I also wonder just how many more Andy Yellow folders are there?